Western concerns swirl around China's growing influence in Africa, with accusations of debt trap diplomacy. But is this a real threat or a misconception? In the last 20 years, China has built big projects all over Africa, which has made some people in the West uncomfortable. But China and Africa can make their partnership even stronger. Some say China's loans are like a trap, where countries get into too much debt and have to give up important things. But no one has proven this is really happening in Africa. It's like a story that sounds true, but when you look closer, it falls apart. People worry a lot about China in Africa, but Chinese investments have also helped the leaders in those countries. This could help China get support on important issues. The US gives aid to Africa, but China prefers to do business. The US and Europe are now trying to compete with China by offering their own infrastructure plans. But experts in China are not sure if they will work. China has been like that good friend who brings you flowers, while others warn you to be careful of the thorns hidden within. It's like a big dance, with China leading the way while everyone else tries to catch up. In Ghana, the British government gracefully passed the power baton over. It was a smooth and dignified transition that happened without any hiccups. Back in the day, African countries gained independence from their European rulers, but as time passed, the US and Europe kind of stepped back from helping develop infrastructure in Africa. On the other hand, China saw an opportunity and began building railways and other vital infrastructure projects in Africa. This not only helped Africa, but also helped China make political allies. China saw an opportunity to expand its market and influence, so they invested heavily in Africa, saying, "We're great at building stuff quickly and affordably, so how about we loan you the money and get it done together?" Africa, with its growing population and lack of infrastructure, was a perfect match for China's skills and resources. China's investments in Africa have been massive, with over $340 billion poured into various infrastructure projects. This is a significant amount for Africa, considering the huge gap in infrastructure development on the continent. China's involvement in Africa isn't just about money. It's about a shared history of fighting against colonial rule and a mutual understanding of the struggles both sides have faced. Africa makes sense for China because they see themselves in Africa's development stage and understand the challenges Africa is going through. China's impact on Africa is immense, with their contributions ranging from ports to power plants to railways. They are involved in over 35 African countries, making a significant difference in bridging the infrastructure gap that has long hindered Africa's progress. As the discussions revolve around the different approaches to financing between China and the West, one can't help but wonder about the millions of loans floating out there in the world. With Chinese lenders, it seems there are three main categories: zero-interest aid loans, concession loans for big projects, and commercial loans with higher rates. But wait, are we comparing apples to oranges here? Because let's face it, loan agreements are usually stacked in favor of the lender. No matter who you're dealing with, the borrowers better be paying attention. In a revealing analysis of 100 Chinese contracts, it was found that these loan agreements are designed to give China an upper hand over other creditors. And let's not forget about those mysterious clauses shrouding these agreements in secrecy. While multilateral lenders have to be transparent about their activities, commercial banks like the Chinese ones often operate under a veil of confidentiality. But hey, the rush to throw money around has led to some less than profitable investments for China. When China first entered the scene with their financing offers, many developing countries were eager for the infrastructure funding. After that, China is getting a lot of attention in Uganda. In 2021, the news about China taking over Entebbe International Airport in Uganda caused quite a stir. But guess what? It turns out that there was no debt trap after all. Both sides have denied the airport takeover, so there is no need to worry. Some people might think that certain governments can't handle their own business, but that's not always true. Experts say that countries borrowing money should make sure the terms are in their favor. In my 20 years of experience, I've never seen China rush borrowers into signing shady deals. They take their time to explain everything clearly, so there are no surprises later on. Yes, there are concerns about how China handles financing, but it's not some big plan to trap countries in debt. Kenya and Nigeria have borrowed a lot from China for big projects. While some worry about transparency, the debts owed to China are only a small portion of the total debt these countries have. So it's not like China can just swoop in and take over because of a few loans. Let's look at the facts here. Only a few African countries owe a large amount to China. Most owe more to private bond markets. Angola holds a big chunk of Chinese debt in in Africa. But if you take them out, the problem is even smaller. So Africa doesn't really have a big Chinese debt issue. It just takes one bad deal to make Western countries nervous. But we need to focus on reality instead of getting carried away with stories. What do you think about this? Is it a trap? Share your view in the comments below, and also hit the subscribe button. Now, let's continue. Let's talk about Congo, the land of precious minerals like copper and cobalt. These resources are super important for things like electric cars and phones. China came in with a big plan to help Congo build infrastructure and mines. But wait, leaked documents showed that money ended up in the pockets of Congo's president and his buddies. That's not cool. Here's the thing, when big countries like China get involved in Africa, it can get a bit tricky. They might not always play fair, and that can mess with governments and the people. People in the West are worried about China becoming too powerful in Africa. It's a big deal because what happens in Africa can affect the whole world. Meanwhile, the US and Europe like to help countries that follow democratic rules. They want projects that help people and don't cause harm. So even if it means the US can't lend money to some countries, it's worth it to stick to good values. We all want to see Africa thrive and grow in the right way, right? When discussing China's involvement in Africa, Chinese officials often highlight their cultural and economic ties to the continent. They emphasize their desire to help Africa overcome similar challenges that China once faced. Meanwhile, African leaders emphasize the urgent need for investment and infrastructure development. They stress that the source of the money is less important than its ability to improve their countries. In contrast, the US and Europe are working on initiatives such as the EU's Global Gateway and the US's B3W to offer alternatives to Chinese investment in Africa. These initiatives aim to address infrastructure needs in developing countries, with a focus on delivering high-quality projects. Critics, however, question whether these projects are genuinely aimed at benefiting African countries or simply countering Chinese influence. Despite differing perspectives on Chinese versus Western investment in Africa, there is a consensus that the continent needs significant infrastructure development. Chinese projects in Africa have brought both benefits and challenges, with discussions ongoing about the terms and processes involved. Ultimately, the debate over who is best positioned to support Africa's growth reflects the larger competition between authoritarian regimes like China and democracies like the US and Europe. While China's speed and efficiency in delivering projects are often cited as advantages, the focus on quality and partnership with African countries is seen as a strength of Western-led initiatives. In the end, Africa's priorities are clear. They need investment and development, regardless of where they come from. The key moving forward will be ensuring that projects are done in a transparent and mutually beneficial manner, addressing Africa's infrastructure needs while also respecting their sovereignty and long-term interests. As the global landscape shifts, Africa remains a key player in determining its own future, balancing the investments and interests of both China and Western powers. And that wraps up today's video. Comment with your views in the comments section below. At last, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel.